I'm Abby King. I'm going to be your host today. And with me, I have our fantastic PAFA Student Experience Coordinator, Kate McKinnon. Hey, Kate, thanks for being here with us. And I just want to welcome everyone to one of my favorite programs that we have each year, celebrating our ASE students. So today we are celebrating some featured undergrad students. We have 5 of them here with us. It's going to be a whirlwind program. We're going to see some fantastic art, and we're so glad that you can be here with us today. To start, I wanted to respectfully acknowledge that our institutional host, the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, is on the ancestral lands of the Lenni Lenape people, whose presence and resilience in Pennsylvania continues to this day. I also want to thank the folks that help make free programs like this possible year after year. This spring's Art at Noon lectures are supported by the Lefko family in memory of a beloved member of the docent corps, Mildred T. Lefko. I also want to talk, I know we've got people from all far reaches of the planet, but for those of you who are in the Philadelphia region or able to, I have to mention that next week, PAFA's annual preview party for the ASE is on May 12th. You can still purchase your tickets today. And this event supports student scholarships. And a big bonus is you get to be some of the first to enjoy access to the sale of these rising artists' work. So if you can, please join us. The show will be open to the public starting the next day, and we'd love for you to come and see this work in person if possible. We also are going to be celebrating PAFA's graduate students in the following week's Art at Noon, which is on May 18th. So please come and support those students as well if you're able to. We'd love to have you there with us. Now, just last few things, we are recording today's program and it will be on PAFA's YouTube channel later today. I'm going to drop a link to that and also a link to those programs I mentioned before momentarily. We have 5 wonderful speakers who are going to be sharing their screens and presenting, and then we'll have hopefully a little bit of time to hear from you. So please utilize that chat, drop things in, questions, and know that we'll try at the end to have some time to hear from them. But so without further ado, it's now my pleasure to hand things over to our first student, Gabrielle. Thank you all for being here with us.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Gabrielle Dobrzelewski and I'm a painting major. Okay, here is a photo of my wall fully installed. So I guess like in regards to the painting or like the body of work that I've been kind of like creating over this past semester or so, I've gotten further and further into like this more personal exploration of color, as you can see. And having all of the pieces kind of like up on the wall was a very, I guess, like special moment to me. I got to kind of like see kind of this like world that I've been like working towards creating come together finally at last. But I guess right now I'm gonna kind of go from general to like specific, and there will be, I think there's like one painting in this presentation that isn't on my wall, but I still feel like it's important to talk about. But yeah, so I've been exploring color a lot, and then also, as you can see, they're all self-portraits, and I've been using myself as this kind of like stand-in character to explore these different, I guess, like concepts and narratives that I find interesting to myself. But yeah, I guess like my primary concern at the moment has been world building and thinking about, I guess, more personal narratives, and finding that usually the more personal I get, the more universal or kind of like broad the stories become in a way. So here you can see my wall, and then now we will go into talking about each piece. So Kate, next slide, please. So this was kind of my first piece that I considered to be more of like a breakthrough piece, just in regards to color usage, but also narrative. A lot of the inspiration that I take, I mean, comes from other visual art and, you know, other forms of specifically like painting, looking at the greats and stuff along the lines such as that. but I also take a lot of inspiration from, you know, a larger variety of media, such as like photography, film, music, you know, literature, stuff like that. So with this piece, I was actually thinking about the lyrics of a song that I was listening to at the time. But I kind of wanted it to portray like a moment when you're like, you know, laying there after who knows what happened, and like the lights kind of like raking over you. And it could be like a moment of serenity or regret. I usually do like to kind of leave the narratives open-ended so people can kind of interpret and insert their own experiences into the pieces. But yeah, this one, I felt like I was beginning to finally get what I wanted color-wise. So next slide, Kate. Thank you. So this piece, I was kind of exploring the theme of death in the maiden. And like one of the themes that kind of like fascinates me, that I at least aim to portray in all of my pieces, as well as this kind of like concept of duality, and that can manifest in a variety of forms. But with this piece, I was thinking about, you know, like death in the maiden, but like in high chroma. And even though I'm very much like committed to a degree of realism in my work, I also like to take a lot of, I guess, like creative liberties. So like the window that I'm kind of standing behind, normally, you know, one would see the reflection of the space that I'm situated in, but I kind of wanted it to make it a more like symbolic presence. So I made it this kind of like color field, to suggest maybe like a void or something along the lines of that. But yeah, that's kind of, I guess, what I was thinking about with this piece. And I felt like this piece was an important one for me as well, because up until that point, up until fairly recently, I guess, this was like one of the largest pieces that I had made to date. All right, next slide, Kate. Thank you. So with this piece, let me look at my notes really quick. So with this piece specifically, I was looking at, you know, there's like the death of Marat, you know, art historical references. I have become increasingly fascinated with the photographs of Francesca Woodman, and also, you know, like looking at like modernist painters like Balthus, and, you know, stuff along the lines of that. But I guess, again, going from kind of like general to specific, a lot of times my work starts out with like a kind of intuitive like feeling or emotion, or like a kind of like movement that I want the painting to, I guess, like illustrate. So a lot of times I do kind of begin thinking in regards to like the formal elements of a piece. So like composition, form, color, stuff like that. And usually in the creation of my pieces, with this one, as with all the other ones you'll see, I usually make a kind of like cartoon sketch, and then I will take a photo of it. And I have like a little projector that I use to kind of like scale up the image. And then I'll kind of go from there. But narratively, usually as I work on a piece, the painting kind of like tells me what it wants or what it needs or what it's even about to begin with. So next slide, please, Kate. Thank you. With this piece, I was interested, again, in the concept of duality, but I guess I wanted to manifest it in having kind of a very maybe still quiet moment on a very, I guess, like active surface in and of itself. So this one's on a wood panel that is in the shape of a circle. And I was thinking again, kind of about maybe like a moment of contemplation and stillness. but also to like kind of maybe illustrating a facet of, you know, the human existence that maybe isn't always depicted or like glorified. It's like, you know, who likes, you know, looking at images of or who enjoys usually like painting, I guess, like images of people like, you know, clipping their toenails or like looking at their foot or something like that. But again, there's like some more art historical references to it. But I feel like with that one, because I had worked within the Tondo shape before, usually in my drawings, but I think having to contend with it on like a larger scale, because this one is 4 feet by 4 feet, was a completely new experience that was really interesting and challenging, and I definitely enjoyed it. Next slide, Kate. Thank you. So this piece, the reason I painted this piece, some of it was I just wanted to have an excuse to paint this kind of like night shirt tunic thing that I had, because I really like luscious, like satiny-esque like fabric. So that was really fun. But outside of that, I guess like thinking in regards to the concept and kind of like development of this piece, because I come from like I went to a Catholic school my entire life. So it's like that kind of imagery has been like heavily ingrained within my psyche. And I do have like this kind of like, I don't know if it'd be even like a morbid fascination with like imagery of like Our Lady of Sorrows and stuff along the lines of that. But you know, I didn't want to like dress myself up as like Mary and just like try to paint like another like religious painting. So I guess kind of my thought process behind this was like, how can I make a religious painting in a contemporary setting? Or how can I make a contemporary setting or contemporary painting have like a kind of like religious quality to it? And this one I titled Morning Ritual with the U in parentheses. So I was kind of thinking about also to like the act of like washing one's face. So I kind of wanted the tears to be like, you know, is she crying? Is she just like washing her face and having a meditative moment? You know, stuff like that. And thinking too about how like a lot of times in times of grief, kind of even like a simple act of self-care, such as washing one's face, is kind of like this one, maybe like grounding act that you can take when the world around you feels like it's spinning. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this one is actually my most recent piece. I think you can kind of see maybe in like on the portion or like the area of the wall, it's still kind of wet a little bit. But this one's also on my wall. But I guess with this one, I was thinking about my ongoing struggle with, I like to call it like analysis paralysis, where I am like a chronic overthinker. It's what I do best. So I decided to make a painting about it because that overthinking a lot of times would prove to be like a hindrance in my studio practice. And I feel like I've finally kind of been figuring out a way how to deal with it in a more, I guess, like productive manner. But like, yeah, thinking about how a lot of times I would spend a good amount of time just kind of like laying in bed overthinking things instead of like, you know, working on a painting or, you know, actually just doing the thing. So in a way it became oddly like self-referential, or like I felt like with this piece I was kind of like taking ownership of that piece of myself, and like upon confronting it, it became a lot less scary, because it's like I made a painting about the issue that was preventing me from making paintings. But even kind of like outside of that, I guess it was just like a lot of fun color wise, kind of having these like purples and greens and, you know, the very like hot like reds and oranges intermixing together. But like again, as I said, like a lot of times my pieces will start off maybe with like a personal narrative or like personal twist, and usually once they're done, like that personal narrative still definitely exists within the piece. But I like to leave it open to interpretation as well. But yeah, I believe that's the last image. Is that the last image, Kate? All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to me speak about my work. And I hope to see you all at the ASE, hopefully. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Grace. I am a painter and an animator and some other things, and I'm really excited to show you some of my stuff today. All right, so this is a self-portrait, obviously. I guess my work is just like about being human, kind of the most relatable thing. But we all have like slightly different experience of it. Um, and I have really appreciated painting and art because it has like, especially this was done a couple years ago, and especially at that point in my life, like painting was an outlet for me to like slow down my thoughts. When you're painting, you can only really think about the painting, um, and so it became like a grounding tool, a way to focus and to understand myself and my environment. And with self portraits, especially, I find them like very very healing in a way because like you have to look at yourself in the mirror for like hours. And the thing with or like especially painting portraits is that like to get a likeness you can't paint somebody how they want to look or like how they want to be seen. Like you have to paint them like as they are. And the same goes with yourself. Like you kind of have to paint like what you look like. And it's like pretty cool because to do that you have to disassociate the like parts of the face or like the objects. You have to like almost pretend that they're not objects or like they're not parts of a face, and they're just shapes of color. And like we can allow ourselves to enjoy every color and like all the shapes next to each other, like the pink next to the green next to the brown. And it doesn't even really matter that it's a face. It's just like a beautiful collection of colors. And yeah, next slide please. So this is another self-portrait I did, but it included more of the environment. And yeah, art has always like mirrored my life and like mirrored the kind of lessons I was like learning at the time. And I like fell in love with perspective at this point. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's like a stigma against like perspective or something. And it can completely become dogmatic. And don't I don't think like it's the thing that you should base your like art on personally, or like base your piece on. But I think I have found a lot of freedom in using it as a tool. And like from my study of perspective, I've learned that you can really bend space however you want, and that's like really freeing, especially if you want to make representational spaces, and also if you just like want to make something like feel like it has movement in your piece. And like it can like depth or anything, and you can like manipulate that all. So it's like the two-dimensional surface of like your painting is almost like it's almost like a an arena for you to sculpt whatever you want, and you sculpt using color shapes. And so I wanted to create the feeling of like just like this room just like closing in on me, and just like subtle suffocation vibes. And because that's what I felt from like my emotions at the time, because like emotions as I define them are like a sensation plus a story about like what that sensation means. Like I like feeling like tightness in my throat and being afraid of like what I'm gonna say. Like now it's like that's like an emotion. That's like a story and a sensation. So I guess like for this one, it was like that kind of suffocating sensation of like, oh, I have all these emotions and I don't know what they mean. I don't know what to do with them. So yeah, I'm gonna make art, and actually like making art brings so much clarity for me. Sometimes it's like actually just like making art that brings clarity. And I guess like for this one too was like making art like allowed me to be present, and that was like, and like just being like present, I don't know, you're like not in your head as much, and like sometimes that's like all the clarity that I need. But and sometimes like art's like it feels like almost like a statement, like closure to something that I've learned. But next slide please. This is a still life I made. Yeah, I was exploring, I was like backed up. So this was during 2020, during like COVID, when all of our classes went online. And I had my studio. I moved all of my art supplies into like my kitchen living room area, this room. And so it like became my studio. So I like, ate with my paint, and I didn't eat my paint, but it was there. And I and so yeah, I was like backed up against the sink and to do this still life. And it was like, I don't know, I really enjoyed being able like living with my art for a while. Like after a year I was like, I really need to separate these things. This is getting a bit much. But at the time it was really, really awesome. I could work on it whenever I wanted, and I really, really enjoyed that freedom. So yeah, this is me again, like understanding, like just like trying to empathize with the objects. It's just like onions and jars, but like it takes a tremendous amount of empathy to paint something. You have to imagine what it feels like in your mind, and almost kind of like touch it with your eyes. You have to like feel the roundness or the texture, or whatever, and paint it as it is, and not just like your preconceived ideas of what it should be. And I've also like that painting, that like thing that I've learned from painting personally, it's like a life thing for me. It's like it's just all about assumptions and about seeing things for what they are, and accepting that. I think there's a lot of beauty in that. Okay, next slide, please. So I have bounced around a lot in my years at PAFA. I've experimented with a lot of mediums, and this is some of my experiments with collages. And I really wanted to, I learned so much from observational work, and I also wanted to, the stories I want to tell really come from my experiences. So I can't really like look at something for those things. So that's the direction I'm going in. So yeah, these are from my imagination and kind of trying to get to the essence of a feeling. Next slide, please. This is another example. taking elements of things that we can see and abstracting them, repeating them, looking at them in different ways. Sound has and music has played a huge role in my art. Next slide, please. This is a recent painting, kind of another visual representation of what I was talking about before, just kind of like you can represent an emotion in an observational piece. This is just like a more direct way and of mapping sensations in the body. Next slide, please. And this is my most recent piece that I actually finished this morning. I'm going to hang it on my wall this afternoon. It's inspired by my relationship with Taylor. I love this piece so much. It's like come from like such a calm place, and I think it looks amazing. And yeah, I really love it. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to talking with you more and seeing you.
Hi, how's it going? My name is Taylor Freeman. I'm a digital sculptor here at PAFA, which is something that's relatively new and introduced within my time here. Our artistic process at its core is the act of combining separate digital softwares into one cohesive art project that embodies the elements of each program I find most attractive. The digital space is relatively new in general, and it's up to the 3D modelers to recognize that there is no one-stop shop when it comes to world building and character design, or when it comes to fabrication of a digital artwork to reality, like 3D printing. The power is truly in our hands to grab the elements we find most useful in each program and use them to not only advance our technical arsenal, but our creative arsenal as well, you know, combining sort of organic shapes with combining, like, I guess the different assets that come with programs. Like Adobe Medium is a virtual reality program that comes with organic shapes. And okay, I'll explain it. Yeah. But with this concept sort of explained as best as I possibly can, I want to show you the beautiful journey. So this is one of my first digital art pieces. I made it in SketchUp under the help of Rob Roche, who's the digital sculptor teacher here. But it felt like there was something lacking in that program, and it was the ability to play with light and textures and colors. It was a program specifically for like blueprinting architecture, which was great for building architecture, but it wasn't great for building the environment that I wanted to build. So it was with that question and with that, you know, search for something more that I discovered Blender, which is another software that's you know, digital. But in this program, you can manipulate light and you can texture how you want, and you can really become like the director in a story that you want to tell, which I found really cool. Next slide, please. Thanks. So this is another shot of that favela. But yeah, I felt like there was also something missing in Blender, which was the ability to like create organic shapes and specifically human bodies. I felt like this program was really based off of hard edges, and it was really hard to make something flowy and something that's designed for straight edges. Next slide, please. So this is when I got into VR sculpting, which is just like real sculpting, but there's no gravity, which is pretty cool. So you can just sculpt and the sculpture floats in front of your face, which I think is amazing. And you have controllers in your hands and you're just like sculpting while sitting down or standing up. But it's just really fun and it's intuitive and it kind of ties into how my childhood was, where I always had a controller in my hand. So it was really fun, and it speaks to my journey. And I think that's something important is at my time at PAFA, I definitely learned a lot about traditional mediums, but I feel like if there's something that you personally enjoy, or you personally find that you attach yourself to, you should chase that, and have these kind of voices and influences speak to your journey rather than sculpt you into a person that you may not be. I was really into I still am into capturing the likeness of people that I feel don't get representation in media and art, similar to Kehinde Wiley and their philosophy of shining light on people who are not sculpted in marble and not sculpted on horses outside of a museum. So yeah, I wanted to do that with my personal experience and the people that I feel like don't get media. Next slide, please. Thanks. So it was through the combination of all these processes, learning how to make organic shapes, learning how to make hard edges, learning how to light, learning how to texture, that I decided to embrace one of my influences, which is Hong Kong. There's an old video game I used to play, which is Sleeping Dogs. It's just this big open world that takes place in Hong Kong. And I think it's absolutely beautiful that somebody just, I don't know, made the time to just, make something beautiful. Like that's permanent. You can play that game whenever you want, which I think is awesome. It's just a walkable, livable art piece. And one thing that I found amazing about the video game in particular is their ability to sort of break up space, and nothing seems straight or nothing seems perfect. It's like this organized chaos, which I think is really cool. And it's really hard to do it's really hard to do on a digital program that's designed for straight edges and cleanness. So yeah, this is the kind of culmination of everything that I've learned. And next slide, please. This is another shot. This is yeah, I'm really proud of this. This is just like everything that I've learned, everything that I appreciate, just all kind of summed up, and it's a lot of processes that don't really get the light, but I feel like it kind of speaks for itself. And whoever wants to research or wants to talk, I'll be at the ASE, so you can ask me that and I'll probably ramble to you. Next slide, please. So yeah, there was one more thing that was missing, which was the ability to kind of turn these intimate spaces and intimate characters that I've been creating into physical, thank you, to physical objects, I wanted to learn how to bring this thing that I created digitally into something that feels tangible and something that has weight to it, so I can feel these emotions that I couldn't feel because it was digital. So I got into 3D printing and puzzle piecing to make huge sculptures. My bed is only about the bed of the printer is only about 10 inches all around. So you really have to print in pieces and then kind of puzzle piece them together. And yeah, this is one of the pieces that will be at the ASE. It's of another world that I did. And that's also the print of what that world looks like will be at the ASE as well. Next slide, please. And this is, this is Rex. This is a character that I made for like a animation project that me and my friend had. And I think that it speaks to just how easily we can collaborate as artists when we use digital mediums. This character was sort of given to my friend as well, and they put it in a scene that they built, and I put it in a scene that I built, and we just sort of made this whole world together. just based off of this universal character, which I think was really cool. I printed them and puzzle pieced them together as well, and I hand painted them like an old toy. So yeah, it was pretty fun, and I love this character. Thank you. I hope to see all of you at the ASE.
Hi, everybody. My name is Aimee. I am a graduating BFA illustration major, and I'm primarily an illustrator, but I'm also a graphic designer. And in my illustration work, I do mostly information and infographic illustration and lifestyle illustration. But in my style, nature is very important. Almost all of my work has some nature aspect to it. Whether that's plants, or flowers, or animals. Previously, I thought that the instinct of involving nature into my work was really just because I was really attracted to it. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that it does have a lot to do with my background growing up in a place like the Dominican Republic and growing up around a lot of nature. So this piece is the first time that I work in something so large scale. This is a unique print. This is 26 by 60 inches, and it's an exploration of my ancestry. And what I mean by that is that last summer I got my ancestry DNA done, and while the results weren't so surprising, they were really interesting. And I mean, I got some Europeans, some Africans, some indigenous. So I immediately knew I wanted to do something with that. I wanted to represent the concept of something native, something endemic. Every percentage or every region that I got in my results, I wanted to represent in this piece with the native plant or flower from that region, and not necessarily use it to replace organs in my anatomy, but to make it as part of myself, as part of my body, to just talk about my identity. And some of these animals or flowers that I emphasize the most, they're not just the native and national flowers of where I'm from, but they're also found in my childhood home. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is one of the examples of the illustrations I create more based on personal experience, in which color and nature are also very important. My process consists of just really looking at what I'm inspired in other illustrators. I look at other illustrators and sort of see what I like and try for it myself, and just take something from personal experience to try to relate to my life and my practice. This, for example, was inspired by my very first kayaking experience. I mean, you don't really see any kayaks anywhere, but what really stuck to me out of the whole experience was the landscape and the sights. So I wanted to represent that in a way that truly speaks to me. Next slide. This illustration it's a very personal one. I wanted to play with imaginative landscapes, and even though I made this when we were sort of coming out of lockdown and sort of going back into quote unquote normal life, I wanted to also represent the feeling of being on lockdown, longing for being somewhere else, but maybe also being content with where you are now. So that's why I created, I made this figure kind of looking outside and longing for something else, but also the inside is very surreal with these big trees that are somehow growing inside. But this is also a play with color palettes. I try to remain very consistent with my color palettes as well. Some texture, and yeah, next slide. And this is also going to be part of my wall, as all the illustrations that I just showed. But this is what's becoming a series for me. I like to experiment with animation, And I made these illustrations specifically for to create animations with them, to animate them with Adobe After Effects. And they're really just me exploring what I can do. Like, I was always very interested in animation, but before I was really just doing more like frame by frame, but this is more like using what Adobe After Effects has to offer when it comes to like movement. So in my wall, I mean, I'm going to include the stills of these animations, just the illustrations. But yeah, that's just a little bit of what I do with animation. I will look more into the field. Like, I'm really interested in the future to like keep expanding this series and just keep animating my illustrations as well. And that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nastassia, and I am a cat illustrator in PAFA. I do illustrations of cats, and I do them mostly digital, but in recent years, I've discovered that I'm really enjoying a handmade feel to it. So I started doing a lot of prints and printmaking. Next slide. All of my illustrations are cats and cats only, and people often ask me why cats, and I don't really know an answer to that. I just enjoy them, and I think it's mostly because cats are really unique creatures. They don't try to amuse us, but somehow they still bring joy to us all the time. And this is the main purpose for all of my illustrations, is to just bring joy to people. They may not have a lot of meaning to them, but art is supposed to provoke emotions. And even if it's not, my illustrations are aimed to provoke joy and bring smile to people's faces. Next slide, please. I do tend to work a lot in screen printing now, and this is one of the examples of my screen prints. I still do a lot of cats in there anyways, and I do tend to play around with minimalistic and less details is more information for me. I do love negative space as well, and I try to include it as much as I can in my illustrations. Next slide. Yeah, this is another example of negative space, and as you can always read information from left to right, you like expect to see something in the beginning, but here you can only see the result first, and then you will see what's going on. Next slide. This is one of the more challenging prints that I made, screen printing prints, in triangles. They are in set of 4, and the rest of them you can see in my wall, which is a big cat. And those were specifically made to fit in cat ears and in some other parts. So you will see the cat ears with slightly different information on the triangle prints, but they are also excited. Next slide. I did create a character. This is the cat it just recent character that I created. And it does represent me in some ways. This little cat just bumps and do stuff anywhere, everywhere, and like sometimes it's slightly personal, but most of the time it's just to enjoy the view, enjoy a cute cat. Next slide, please. This is the screen print that I made as well for exchange print. So there will not be a lot of editions available for sale, but I really enjoyed this piece, and it just brings a lot of joy to me, and I hope it brings a lot of joy to you as well. I do tend to work in small sizes, and sometimes it's really, really small. And when I speak about that, I always bring up that I also a bookbinding, and I do a lot of bookbinding, but it's not just regular bookbinding, it's a miniature bookbinding. And I don't have any images of that included in the presentation, but I do have an examples of them here, and they're just a smallest piece of all the different kind of bookbinding you can imagine. This one is a Coptic stitch. They all you can open, you can all like go through, you can write in them, read in them. It just depends on the piece. I also have like the small flag book in here. They all like no more than the size of a nail or like a penny together. I do hardcovers books, like they are pretty much have text in them, which is like 4 points in type. And I did some of the books with prints as well, and they contain little stories that I create. So yeah, pretty much that's it. I love cats, and I do everything to show that. Thank you so for coming here, and I hope to see you on my AC.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for ending us on that moment of joy. I saw in the comment section that we all need some of that. So thank you. And thank you to all of our speakers for your insights and for sharing your work with us today. So we have a little bit of time, and we'd love to hear from our audience. So feel free to drop things in the chat, questions, or also if you'd like to ask a question verbally, just make sure to raise your hand with that participant button at the bottom of your screen, or wave at me and I will find you. We want to hear from all of you. And to kick things off, I wanted to ask just to anyone who wants to answer what it felt like to have this moment of having your wall, because all of you have your walls done. Congratulations, number one on that. But all of you got to see this moment of your work on the wall. And if there are any things that surprised you about seeing it all together, or even putting together your thoughts for what you shared to us today, because I know having experienced that as a PAFA alum, that's a special moment.
I think it was really cool, I guess, or fulfilling. It felt kind of fulfilling to see it all kind of like come together at last. Kind of like what I had said to you when we were like running through, before we started, just like having it all together and have it be like this like cohesive thing, I guess, was really amazing, and kind of seeing what like 4 years of work kind of like led to.
Yeah, thank you for that, Gabrielle. So we have a question from Carissa. Hi, Carissa. It's good to see you. Asking what your favorite part of the creative process is.
What's up? I think conceptualizing about like what you enjoy and really like diving in and exploring these things that you're allowed to explore, you know. I think there's an amount of like guilt factor of like, am I allowed to enjoy this? But we are. And I think that's the best part, is like kind of picking what you enjoy and going with it, you know, allowing yourself.
Thanks, Taylor. Anyone else? Favorite parts of the creative process? Aimee?
I don't know if this counts as creative process, but I think for me, it's when it's at least close to being done. I think I wish I was a little bit better at I will say like making really tight sketches and having like a better idea of what I'm gonna do before I finish, like before I start to like making the final illustration and the final piece. But in reality, I think maybe my classmates will relate. Like, I think for me, like, I tend to be a little bit impatient with the creative process, and I want to start things as soon as possible and start creating the final piece. So when things are looking a little bit more real, it's to me the best part, when it's like close to being done, if that makes sense.
I would also say that my favorite part of creative process is catching cats for references.
Thank you. Fantastic.
I want to say something too. I feel like there's a part in the creative process that like I love and hate. It's like the part where you have like the feeling for what you want to do, but you have no idea how to do it. It's like the challenge, and I feel like my favorite part is like being in that gap and knowing that I have the answer, and then like trusting myself enough that like I'll like know what to do eventually. So like when I get the light bulb, like, oh, that's what I need to do. I think like that's a really cool part.
Similar, similar to, oh, sorry. Similar to Grace, I guess kind of it's like when the project first begins, that's usually when I have the most fun. I think some of it too, it's like it's in the first stages. I kind of like fall in love with like the potential that maybe an idea offers. And then usually when I like finish a piece, there's always like some degree of, I guess, like dissatisfaction where it's like, oh, like this is it. Okay. But I use that dissatisfaction in a productive way where it's like, oh, that just means I need to make another painting then and make another painting then. And, you know, it never ends. But in a good way, it's a lot of fun. So I think usually, yeah, the inception is like the most fun part.
Yeah, I'm of a similar guild to you, Gabrielle, where, yeah, but I hope you can all take this moment, like Taylor said, and feel really proud of what you've achieved and proud of what's on your walls and in your studios, because it's amazing to see. Oh, Clint, yes, please.
Thanks, Abby, and thanks so much for moderating this awesome program, and congratulations to all the artists. So much amazing work, and awesome to hear you talk about your thinking behind it. So my question is, if you think about the artist you were when you entered PAFA, what is most surprising to you now in terms of the work you're making?
I'll answer that. I started off as an acrylic painter. I was really into like mural arts-esque that journey. And now I'm doing like weird digital fabrications of stuff. And I don't know, that wasn't what I expected when I first came here. But I think that it just speaks to I don't know, our ability to change and our ability to go with what we want. I know there's a lot of people here that have had a lot of media changes and a lot of conceptual changes. I don't think there's any possible way you can go to PAFA and not experience that. It's just the growing process, and I think it's really cool that I don't know, things went the way they did. You know, yeah.
Thanks, Taylor. Anyone else?
I'll answer that question too. I guess I always knew what I wanted to do in regards to like becoming a painter, and specifically like a representational painter. But I think like probably looking back at me a few years ago versus me now is probably how much I've kind of, I guess, explored like color. Because like coming in, I was mainly like interested in, I guess, think like Baroque painting, like, you know, I love Caravaggio, love like all that stuff. And I still do, they still hold a very important place in my heart. But like, you know, now I feel like color has become something that's like more personal to me. And before I kind of had this idea that like, oh, like, you know, I can just use like a really limited palette. Like I don't need all of these extra colors, blah, 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 blah. But I think I realized that in doing that, because number one, I came mainly from like a drawing base, I guess like origin, so to speak. So like value was my safe place and like color was like scary, uncharted territory. But I realized, I think especially this year, or even like, because I did take a year off, so like my year off and then like coming back, that in being closed off to, I guess, like the beauty and like variety of color, I was kind of like just closing myself off to, I guess, like fully engaging with like the beauty that I saw in the world. So yeah, definitely a big change, but in a good way, for the better.
Yeah, thank you for that. Oh, and your color, it's fantastic, Gabrielle. So I want to give a second because I don't want to steal the last question, but if we don't have anybody itching, I'm really curious, as someone who's also, you know, gone through a little bit of what you all are experiencing at PAFA, how your colleagues, how your community at PAFA has influenced your work, and if you can speak to that, sort of what it feels like, because you're all so different tonight, or today, excuse me, but I can see the threads of the through lines of how you're working on this together. So I'm curious if anyone can speak to that. Maybe a little vague on that, sorry. But yeah, how does working with your peers, has that influenced your work or changed you in this journey?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I always learn probably more from my peers than from my teachers almost. And it's because like we're at the same challenges, and so it's really awesome to like have people to problem solve together. Obviously we all have to do it in our unique ways, but I've also like, there's a lot of like different like groups at PAFA, and I've really appreciated over the years like being able to kind of work with a variety of people, because like I like everybody's kind of like focused on like really like focused in a particular area, and I like it's really cool to like dive deep into something with other people. It's very motivating and inspiring.
I was gonna say, for me, before I came to PAFA, I was somebody who really dreaded critiques, and being in a space, especially in person, being in a space where we can all give each other constructive criticism, even though we're all doing very different things, whether that's like the subject of our work or even like the medium, has made me a lot more receptive of critiques and almost wanting them now more than ever, because I have learned through the critiques that, you know, my peers have given me, and just like being constantly in that space of constructive criticism, that it is only just to make your work a lot better than it is.
Yeah, thank you for that, Aimee. That's definitely a big part of that process, and glad to hear that it was constructive and supportive. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you for everyone who spent their afternoon with us, and an even bigger thank you to our speakers. So I'm going to let you all say goodbye, but thank you for sharing your work and this important moment. It was amazing to see all of your different practices. And if you haven't already, plan on coming out next week to the preview party to see once it's open to the public, and see these artworks in the flesh. So thank you all. Take care.